And now, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, U.S. Army Colonel J.P. McGee. Colonel McGee is a National Security Affairs Fellow at Hoover and is a West Point graduate who holds a Master's of Science degree in Administration from Central Michigan University. An infantry officer who has served extensively in both conventional and special operations units. He's an experienced counterterrorist and counterinsurgent. Since 9/11, he has deployed seven times to Afghanistan and twice to Iraq, most recently for 14 months as infantry battalion commander in Samarra, Iraq. Before arriving at Hoover, he served as a deputy executive assistant to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Michael Mullen. This summer, he's slated to command the 1st Brigade Combat Team of the 101st Airborne Division. He and the division slated to deploy to Afghanistan in January of 2013. His research focuses on development and post-conflict environments. His topic tonight is Afghanistan past, present, and potential futures. His remarks are based upon his on-the-ground experiences there, and he will offer some insight into what the future may hold for Afghanistan and its people. Please join me in giving Colonel McGee a big, warm Silicon Valley welcome.
As Jerry mentioned, I'm the National Security Affairs Fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford, which is this program where for a year, in lieu of going to the Army War College or one of the other military war colleges, there are 75 fellowships that are available across the nation. You go with civilian institutions. And when it came time for me to choose one, there was absolutely no doubt which was first in my mind, because even if you're an Army colonel, you have a mother, and she expected me to move back here to the area the first time I had a chance. Raise my voice. And members of family and friend right here in the front row, I call them my cheering section whenever I give a talk. It's nice to have home field advantage. I'd like to... Is that better?
Yes.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit this evening about Afghanistan, and then I'll take any questions you have if you want me to talk about Iraq or Afghanistan, the situation that's going on in the Middle East as best that I know it. This discussion on Afghanistan is based on a number of different sources. The class I just finished taking at Stanford, my personal observations, trips to Afghanistan I've taken with the chairman, and a number of books that I've read. And I'll tell you up front that my intention is to be somewhat provocative in this discussion. I'm going to hit a number of aspects of Afghanistan, maybe giving you a different way of looking at it, and I really would like to get past the bumper stickers and some of the preconceived notions that surround Afghanistan. And again, I'm really interested in your questions, but I'd like to change and maybe give you a richer context, a more nuanced understanding of Afghanistan, an area that has become so important to us since 2001, but really has reached a center of great focus since about 2009. An author, a guy named Thomas Barfield, once said, "The less the world knows about a place, the easier it is to generalize about it." And that is probably most true about Afghanistan right now as we look around the international stage. And again, so I will attempt to give you some thoughts and some different ways of looking at it. There is the widespread, so first now the past. There is the widespread belief, often perpetuated in all sorts of different mediums, that Afghanistan is ungovernable, that it is backwards, that it is fractious, that it is tribal, that it is the graveyard of empires. I think you would be interested to note that many Afghans will laugh at this, saying that they have actually a very proud history of being ruled by other people and being ruled very well. And the reason why they would say that is because their history bears it out. The fact of the matter is that there are long periods of Afghanistan that have been effectively ruled by other countries and self-governed themselves, not necessarily the standards that we have today, but still have been able to establish the writ of a government over the area that is now defined as Afghanistan. From 963 to 1187 AD, The Ghaznavid Empire ruled over Afghanistan, spread into Persia, and ruled that area for 224 years. That was an empire out of Ghazni, Afghanistan, south of Kabul. And again, 224 years they expanded the writ of governmental control over Afghanistan. The Safavids of Persia ruled the area that is known as Afghanistan for over 200 years, from 1510 until 1716. It was a period of peace and extended far beyond Afghanistan and Persia. It extended all the way to Europe, and it was a truth of the time that a man could walk from Sarajevo to New Delhi and not be molested in his travels. The systems of roads and the security that was established by the Safavid Empire was as such that commerce flowed freely, and these true sort of cultural centers of learning, art, and development happened, some of them occurring within Afghanistan. It is true to state that Afghanistan is astride multiple cultural lines of influence. From the east, you have the Persian, the Indian and Mughal influence. To the north, you have the Turkmen influence. And to the west, you have the Persian influence coming in, all of which has made a rich cultural history of Afghanistan. That again goes much farther than this idea of this absolutely primitive, backward society that you constantly see perpetuated in the media. The Afghanistan state came into being in 1747, founded by Ahmed Shah Durrani, who was nicknamed the Iron Amir. Pretty cool nickname if you gotta have a nickname. And that monarchy lasted until 1973. So let me say this again, 1747 until 1973. So before a Revolutionary War, until the presidency of Richard Nixon, they had a form of monarchy under the Durrani dynasty that ruled Afghanistan. Now, it wasn't always completely and utterly tightly centrally controlled. There are a number of revolts that would pop up every 50 to 100 years, but largely established the writ of governmental control over that area up until 1973. It was during this time that the British chose to make two rather ill-fated incursions into Afghanistan, which has then given rise to the other great sort of myth about Afghanistan, at least in my opinion, that it's somehow this graveyard of empires, that every conquering nation goes in there and is automatically beaten up and destroys their empire. Clearly it was not true of the Safavids, it was not true of the Mongols. The British entered there twice, in 1838 and 1842, and again in 1878 and 1880. But they were doing a very different role in trying to take over Afghanistan, and they were really only interested in using Afghanistan as a buffer state against what they perceived as Russian influence coming from the north and to the west. And the idea was to get a state that could buy them some time so they could mobilize troops in India, which was their true strategic interest, get them up into the passes along the Himalayas and be able to stop an invading Russian army. And of course that threat actually never materialized, but that was really what the British were trying to do. At no point did the British try to establish that as part of their empire like they did very successfully with other places, most specifically the jewel of the British Empire, which was India, right on the other side of the mountains. So then to make an analogous comparison to what we are trying as a nation right now and as an international community in Afghanistan, similar to what the UK or what Great Britain did in the middle of the 1800s, really is a historical stretch that I find almost insulting to the intelligence. First off, Afghanistan was only of limited regional importance to the United Kingdom and to their empire. In no way, shape, or form was it linked to their actual domestic national security issues. I mean, the idea of a threat in the mid-1800s emanating from Afghanistan and attacking Great Britain was absolutely fantastic to them, and it just was not a potential. In terms of debunking the thought that this was somehow the end of the British Empire or that Afghanistan had become the graveyard of the British Empire, two very small punitive expeditions did not succeed, but that was about it. Of course, as we all know, the British Empire didn't end until the end of World War II, and its demise had absolutely nothing to do with Afghanistan. And let's not forget that this all happened within the context of a completely different world than the world that we live in today. 130 years ago, significant competition between nation states in terms of influence in the region. Nothing at all like what we're seeing, at least not many similarities to what we're seeing today. But all too often you see this sort of, the British failed, so the Americans therefore are doomed to fail. I just personally don't subscribe to that. The fact of the matter is, for a good chunk of their history, the different rulers in Afghanistan, to include Afghans, have made control and influence over the area. And it would be interesting, I think, for most Americans to realize that Afghanistan in the 50s and 60s, as part of this Cold War sort of competition with the Soviet Union, was the focus of a tremendous amount of assistance and developmental aid from the United States. Kandahar Airfield was built by the United States, the irrigation system in the Helmand River Valley, to the west of Kandahar, sort of the breadbasket of Afghanistan. Huge amounts of U.S. funding to go in and build the irrigation system in that area. And the 60s enjoyed a brief period of being a very popular hippie hangout in the 1960s due to the plentiful and cheap availability of drugs. But again, you could travel in the 60s and 70s through Afghanistan, portions of the 70s, Afghanistan, without any real fear of banditry or being taken hostage or any other violence against you. It was a tourist destination of sorts, not a remote one, for sure, but a tourist destination. Again, I think that's all very contrary to the popular image that we often hear about Afghanistan, this vast hostile land filled with these tribal leaders who are ready to cut off a Westerner's head the minute he shows himself. That's really not accurate to their history. 1973, a civil war broke out. It was when the Durrani monarchy came to an end. Very strong atheistic communists took over the government and then started some very repressive social reforms that were largely focused on eliminating Islamic influence in the area that really alienated the rural population and went against their tribal and their sort of societal and religious values, which caused this very large insurgency to start moving against the central government, again, this communist puppet state. And that's when the true rebellion, that's when the true insurgency began. In 1979, the Soviet Union, faced with a client puppet state in Afghanistan about to lose control, made the decision to invade Afghanistan. That decision was made exceptionally reluctantly, as archives now show from the debates within the Soviet power structure about whether they should go or not. Big disagreements between the KGB, the Politburo, the military officers on whether they should go in there at all, because they just did not want to get drawn into there. But at the end, they decided that they had to prop up the state there, and they went in there. In the height of Soviet involvement there, this was from 1979 to 1989, about 120,000 Soviet troops. Over 10 years, so 10-year involvement, the Soviets lost somewhere around 14,400. And the numbers are somewhat up to debate, but there's no estimate of Soviet deaths in Afghanistan in a 10-year period, which puts it any higher than 15,000. Again, you would think from all the popular that hundreds of thousands of Soviets went in there and hundreds of thousands of body bags came back. The fact of the matter, it was it was much less than that. And if you take into consideration Soviet military history and their ability to absorb casualties, I'll give you a couple of casualty numbers from World War II and the way the Soviets conducted their operations. 478,000 Soviet dead in one battle outside of Stalingrad. And then in the course of World War II, for the Soviets, that was 1940 to 1945, the Soviets on their own shot 158,000 of their own soldiers for cowardice in the face of battle. Okay? So to suggest somehow that the loss of 14,000 troops and the prestige that came with being expelled from Afghanistan caused the end of the Soviet Empire, again, I think is a farcical notion. It's sort of popularism and bumper stickerism at its worst. The fact of the matter is the Soviet Union had deep systemic structural issues that was ripped apart. Afghanistan played a role, but certainly not the decisive role, and certainly not one that should earn it the moniker as a graveyard of